Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Lit Careers Ignite 2025. Today is Wednesday, April 23rd, and we are starting our next presentation with Dr. Ken Keis and the Quest for Purpose, a self-discovery process to find it and live it. Dr. Ken Keis, please take it away.
That was the quickest introduction so far. Was it? So let's just run right into it. I mean, this is something from my heart because we are talking about what was really something, a journey that I went through personally, and we'll do my introduction here in a moment. So the question for everybody watching the recording or being on this call is, are you living on purpose? And if we think about, Mario, your work around career development. I've spoken at many career development conferences. And what's interesting is there's a lot of career development coaches and counselors who are not living on purpose and they're trying to help other people to do the same thing. So, how can I help other people to live on purpose when I'm actually not doing it myself? We're going to run through a very quick overview of my book and online course around this whole process, but I went through this personally myself in 1989, and so that I know that this works. And a lot of times people are not really willing to do the work to be able to invest to clarify what their purpose is. So we'll go through all these different steps as part of this process. And of course, as I mentioned, there's an entire online course and journal that supports this, because this is just really an introductory call. And if somebody wants to learn more or find out more, then they can do it this way. Okay. So when we think about purpose in life, our purpose as a company is to help others to live, lead, and work on purpose. And our highest level of contribution is when we do and have that purpose. I've been in this profession now for 36 years. I've now authored 4 million words of content, 500 published articles, 10,000 hours of coaching consulting. So really, it's just my passion to help others to realize their full potential as part of that process. As one of our anchor points is, as an assessment company, this presentation is really around narrative and how we do journaling and how we find out about things, is that our assessments also contribute to clarity for individuals, as well as our online courses, because our assessments are learning tools, not evaluative tools, so that people can make intentional decisions in life. One of the things is that if you're watching the recording or on this webinar, is that we do have a certification for those individuals who are doing professional development for other for groups as part of your role or responsibility. So just go to that link at CRG Leader around certification, find out more, and if you have any questions, we'll be able to respond to that. So my story is that I actually grew up on a dairy farm. And as part of that, just to prove, here's when I was like 10 years old, my 4-H picture, a little bit older when my hair was not as gray as it is right now. And then this was the airplane picture before drones of the family farm way back in 1974. So, and I actually had my own dairy farm for a while, but I got up one morning. It was 5:30 in the morning and the sun was coming up, and I had my cows right at this location, and I asked myself this question. I says, if I'm here 20 years from now, is that okay? And I said, absolutely not. And so when we ask ourselves the questions around purpose, are you doing what you love doing? Are you doing what you enjoy doing? Are you doing what you are called to do? And a lot of people don't ask that question. Now, yesterday when we were doing the presentation on leadership, I referenced the fact that my grade 9 teacher said I would not amount to anything because I couldn't read or write. And it was discovered when I did my MBA that I'm dyslexic. So the invention of the computer and the little red line saved my bacon, per se. But here I am now, an author of all these words. I never, even getting into my late 20s, early 30s, could have envisioned that I would be an author of all these tools. And I love doing that. But it's so a lot of times we are directed incorrectly by people around us, well-meaning teachers, to go in directions that really are not appropriate, where they said, I won't amount to anything because I couldn't read or write. But the invention of the computer really was what saved me, because of all the different things that it would do to do the spelling and all spell check. So the question for you today, excuse me, the question for you to do is, what is your purpose? Now, my purpose is really to help communicate and influence other individuals to realize their full potential. So here's just in our certification when we were doing it live. My family, I just love my daughter and her son-in-law at their wedding. So your purpose, if you are in the career development area or the helping field in any way, it's to live your life purpose, but it's also to help others to live theirs. And this is what this whole session is about. So, when we think about purpose, we're going to go into purpose before careers. Now, you can't read everything that's on this slide deck, but I just wanted to say this was a study of what was the impact that career counselors and career developers had on students, both in high school and in college. And what interesting thing is that these red arrows that are circled, there was a negative relationship between students talking to career counselors and the impact it had on their life. So the reality is we believe that the career development process in many cases is broken because they're trying to get people into professions, the National Occupational Code or as knock codes, as they're called. That is not what we want to be doing with young people or even adults. We want to clarify who are they, what are they doing, what's their direction, and it's not about a career, it's about your personhood. Now, university, 67, now this is just a couple of years old, but 67% of parents want their children to go to university. So, okay, so you want to go to university for a bachelor's of arts degree that really you can't use when you later on. So why would we want to go if there's not application with that? Now, this one is very powerful because there's so many job opportunities in the trades these days. Only 2% of the parents want their kids to go to trade school. So if I want to be an electrician or a plumber or a crane operator at 120,000 a year, is they're being directed away from these things. I used this slide yesterday when I was in Singapore doing certification of our tools with our local agent there. This is my wife Brenda standing in front of the expensive billion-dollar mall there. Is Singapore being one of the top 5 GDPs in the world? They had just done a study is that only 5% of the population was fully engaged at work. So obviously money is not what causes people to live on purpose or be connected. Now, there are many interest inventories that are used in the industry, and they use knock or SIC codes, as I mentioned before. Do you know that how many job titles are there in North America now? And that is 40,000 and growing. And you know what? The jobs that our kids are going to do aren't even invented yet. If you started to think about an AI prompt technician, even 10 years ago, I said, what the heck is that? So we don't really believe that interest inventories work because they can't keep up with the opportunities that are out there. And there's no interest inventory that has 40,000 job titles that is part of it. Now, I'm not saying that they don't contribute to clarity, but they really, as a foundational piece, don't have people to get clear about what they do. When I completed an interest inventory, it says you're supposed to be a president. And I said, about what? Doing what? And so there's no really SIC or not code exactly what I do as far as owning an assessment and training company and being a professional speaker. So in this whole thing is self-awareness is foundational to our sustainability. Is if I don't know who I am, how could make possible intentional decisions about where I'm at? So when Dr. Tasha wrote the book Insights, and I had her on my podcast, she was trying to understand what percentage of people believe that they are self-aware. And it's 95% of people believe that they are conscious, awake, and aware, and their opinion of self and how they come across with others is congruent with how others see them. Then Tasha had her students go out and say, okay, what is your opinion of Ken? Well, it's only 10% are congruent. So 85% of people are delusional, meaning how they're seen, how they're experienced, how they are perceived by others is not congruent with what they see with themselves. So, in other words, my self awareness is low. So, the late Dr. Dwayne Dwyer, who wrote the book Excuses Be Gone, said that in self awareness, all things are possible. I know that I know that I know versus I don't know that I don't know that I don't know. So, less than 10% of the population by the research is living on purpose. That is a sad state of affairs. When Brendan Bouchard wrote the New York Times bestseller, High Performance Habits, he identified 6 habits of high performers. The number one habit of high performers was clarity. They knew who they were, they knew the direction they were going, they knew what their calling was. And so that is primarily, or the primary focus. Now, for those of us that have been in the career development field for years, this book was on the New York Times bestseller list for over 25 years. What Color's Your Parachute? Written by Richard Bowles. Now, and so when Richard was, I had a coffee with Richard. Now, he's passed away recently. And I asked him the question, I said, with all the opportunities out there, with all the things that are going on, why do we have so many people still confused? 70, 80, 90% not living on purpose. And he said immediately, because people are not willing to do the work. So when we think about going forward today, is that I want to really lay out what I believe are some round wheels. What do the square wheels represent? They represent the old ways of doing things, how we've always done it. What do the people in the back of the wagon see? They only see the back of the wagon. So if I'm trying to figure out what my purpose in life is, and all I see is the back of the wagon, then what's the likelihood I'm going to change? I'm not. Who's the person in the front? Maybe that's a parent, maybe that's a career counselor trying to kind of drag that person around. So what are the round wheels represent? Well, new opportunities, new things, new directions. But what do the people in the back of the wagon see? They don't see the round wheels. So the question, though, for this session, and if you're watching the recording, is whose responsibility is it to put the round wheels on? It's the person that we show it to. So my job here in this process is to give you a system and processes, an approach and a methodology to be able to live your life on purpose and to teach others to do the same thing. But whose responsibility it is to implement that? It's yours. It's theirs. I can't do it for you. You can only do it for yourself. So hopefully we frame it out that you are going to consider or have an opportunity to have some round wheels today. And I'll mention that as we go through it. We believe in a strengths model, meaning that we want to have individuals play to their strengths. Developing your weaknesses is highly overrated. It's not to say that you don't pay attention to your weaknesses, but you mitigate them and then you focus on your strengths. I know that I should never be an auditor for an accounting department. Just not going to happen. Oh, sorry, I had a duplicate slide. So here's a picture with Richard Nodell and Dick Bowles that I mentioned earlier. And both of them, between the two of them, had 80 years of research and experience in the career development field. And they said if people just are not willing to do the work to get clear about who they are and what they're doing in life. When we created CRG, which is now in this 46 years of existence, where it's founded in 1979, I've been connected to since 1989, and I bought it in 2002. So I've got 23 years of owning the company. We developed this personality development factors model that when I'm trying to get clear in life, I have all these factors that contribute to my personhood, that contribute to my clarity. So we are going to be talking about narrative, which is I'm journaling. They're the only person who has answers to the certain questions that we have in the quest for purpose is you. There's no assessment, no process that can replace that. However, there are contributions from assessments that you complete that bring clarity to you for who you are. Now, in the center of this document is spirituality. Belief systems highly influence what you do and what you don't do. So what I believe is going to influence what I want to do. Now, it was interesting when I was doing the research for my book, The Quest for Purpose. Now, the passion test, Janet Atwood is a friend of mine. She wrote the book. And Kenneth Robinson, for a while, he's just recently passed away, called Finding Your Element, had the most watched YouTube for many, many years. It was around 15 million views a few years ago. In here, Ken just kind of alludes and says, listen, spirituality is not important. I actually believe it's the opposite, is that your foundational understanding of meaning in life is the most important. So it's meaning before purpose, because we have to get meaning from something else externally. I mean, if you believe in nothing, then that is going to affect your decision making. If you believe there's something else going on from a spiritual point of view, from the universe point of view, from a God point of view, then your decisions are going to be driven differently. So, what you believe highly influences what you will do and what will not do. Even if you say you believe in nothing, then that is your belief system. It is impossible as a human being to not have a belief system, since what some call nothing is in fact something. And that's my quote out of the book. So, as part of this, I just want to suggest to you that the journey for people trying to figure out their purpose in life, they miss this step. Other books don't even allude to this step. And this is foundational before I even get into what my calling, my assignment is. My colleague, my friend, Dr. Andy Stager, wrote the book Thinking. And he said, here are 5 big questions that people constantly ask in coffee shops. What is the meaning of life? Does God exist? Do all religions lead to God? Why is there evil? Is there life after death? So I just want to encourage you that this is a journey that you and those people you serve need to go through to be able to confirm. So here's Dr. Andy. He's actually created the Human Project as well to say, okay, why do people sort of massacre other individuals? That's because they don't see them as human, and they see them as, quote unquote, they call them things like rats or scum or whatever to dehumanize those individuals. Now, as we switch into the quest for purpose, what we call beliefs, I'm just going to take you through some foundational sort of beliefs that we have as the author of the book and the online course for you to consider to say, okay, here are the strategies. If somebody is going to live a life on purpose, then here are some of the things that you need to consider. First of all, the myth of motivation. Nobody can motivate you to do anything. Interests actually don't require motivation. So, example, let's say you are a golfer and you love golfing. If your friends called you and said, listen, it's beautiful weather outside, you're free this afternoon, would you love to go golfing? And you say yes. You don't even think about, I don't know if I'm motivated to do it. Now, maybe if you don't have the energy, that could apply, but I don't need to be motivated to do these presentations. I've done 3,000 paid presentations all around the world. This is something that's just in my genetic, it's in my genes. So if you are doing what you love to do, interests don't require motivation, because interests actually compel, interests draw us, interests attract us, interests pull us. So we want to go on this journey and say, what is it that I love to do that allows me to just be energized by just showing up? So that's one of our belief systems. The other one is that we believe that for the most part, we change form but not content. So I've been in the professional development field just shy of 40 years. I know I look young and I'm still energized, but if I think about when I started in this profession, and I know I'm dating myself, and those of you that are younger watching this, you might be shocked to hear, but I got into this profession before there was internet. And so in the 90s, I had the contract with another individual to do all the people development for Chrysler. And so, but we didn't have email to send all our development and our courses. I commuted from the West Coast to Detroit every week for a year because there was no such thing as email. And we had to meet in the room to be able to develop all the coursework together. And so, but now we now have a virtual company. Tad is on this call with us as a virtual assistant and administrator and executive assistant helping out, but in living in a different part of the country. So who would have known that this would have been the norm from 30 years ago? So the form has changed. Us putting all our tools online. When I bought the company, all our tools were in print. There was no such thing as the online assessments and then online courses. And then after 2020, everybody realized that this kind of format, this course, this webinar that we're doing right now, a lot of people appreciated that the comfort of your home, the comfort of work, you didn't need to travel anywhere, that this is now a different way that we're doing. The other one is on the bottom of this page is that interests really nourish us. They energize us. And so after this, I might be a little weary physically because of the energy it requires to do this presentation, but it's an energizing event for me. And so should everybody who's doing their work out there. So we progress with our different things. The other one is that I believe that our life leaves clues, but most people are not paying attention. And so instead of trying to do a national occupational code or trying to get into a career, we want people to look at the pieces of the puzzle that contribute to your life and what you want to do. So I said there's no knock code for what I do because I'm writing assessments. I'm developing a company that is now in 30 countries, 13 different languages. So there's no national occupational code for exactly for what I'm doing. So, but I'm looking at the little pieces that help and the clues that help me to create a life or a career that reflects what is playing to my strengths, playing to my interests. Now, just a point of clarification. Those of you that take personality assessments, and we have the #1 personality assessment in the world called a personal style indicator. Personal style or personality is not the same as interests, gifts, and talents. Those are separate measures. You should not be determining the career that you should go in or nor teaching other people what career they should go in based on their personality. Yes, based on their job component and the nature of the work, there is a connection, but there are individuals who have identical, I'll call it personality types. One who wants to be a fighter pilot, another person wants to be a police officer, another wants to be a firefighter, somebody wants to be a teacher, or somebody wants to be a career counselor. So there's biases that are put into that. So I just want to encourage you that. The other one is that a lot of times there are so many well-meaning relatives. I remember when I was leaving my sales position, I was the #1 sales rep for an agricultural company. And when I was leaving it to start my sales training company in 1989, my dad said, "Why would you want to do that? Because you have a company car, they pay for your lunches. That's all a person needs." And so there are a lot of people that I have this statement that I use in many situations. Almost every single person around you who knows you will have an opinion, but very few people have wisdom. And the last person you want to ask about what your direction is life you want to do are close friends, because if they don't have experience in, let's say, owning their own business, why would you ask that person about starting your own business? It's the same thing of trying to ask for parenting skills with people who don't have kids. This is just not really a wise choice. So just be careful and aware as you're teaching others and working with others and or yourself, is that you want to be around individuals who are going to be supportive. They're going to have questions that are inquisitive, causing you to kind of go deep into what you want to do. Now, here's the other thing is there are so many pulls in life. And in my book, Why Aren't You More Like Me, which is a complementary book to The Quest for Purpose, is that life really is around, you have this uh, direction that society wants people to be upwardly mobile. I had a client at 6,000 employees, and they had a individual, it was a retail outlet, and they had this woman who was the #1 cosmetic salesperson in the entire country, company. And they wanted to promote her to be supervisor. And she says, "I don't want to be a supervisor." And for months and years, they were putting pressure on her for her to be the supervisor of a department. And I said, "Don't you get it? She's #1 because she's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing. Stop trying to promote her." So one of the things, the keys for success, is for us to say no as well as yes. So some people take a promotion and they promote themselves into misery because they're now not doing what they love doing. So the other one is that career is, almost a myth. We have a calling. So, and as an absolute. So sort of and we don't actually have a work life and a home life. We simply have life. I mean, everything goes into, what do you want to call it? Blends together with our phones, with our work. And so I just have a home life. I want to have balance. When I go on holidays, I'm doing emails every single morning for about an hour. And I'm okay by that, because that way when I come home, I have those items done. I'm not backed up for a whole week and stressed by that. So again, the things come into play. Now, my son referred me to this book, Range, and this is a bit of a heady book. So if you're into kind of going deep, but here's what David discovered in his research of people who were successful in life: is the more diverse your background, the more varied your experience, the better you are. So even athletes. So when Roger Federer was a tennis champion, he at 16 he actually made the decision to not do soccer as a professional individual athlete, but he decided to go down tennis. So he shows several different examples in society where individuals who have a varied background are the best at doing their job and roles because they have problem solving outside of it. Example, NASA had a problem with one of their chemistry things that they were trying to do. This is a few years ago. So they couldn't figure it out. So rocket scientists couldn't figure it out. They posted the problem online and said, could anybody help us with this problem? Well, there was a baker online who figured it out based on the chemistry that he understood because of his range of background. So being a specialist in some cases is actually a detriment to finding solutions because you get so myopic in your vision. So when we think about purpose, there's another component in the chapter in the book and also in the online is that we need to have a mindset that causes us to do things. A lot of times people don't choose careers that they feel called into or want to do because they have fear. They have the fear of unknown. I don't know what I'm going to do there. So when I left the dairy farm, I'm the firstborn male, third generation Eastern European descent. And when I left the farm, everybody said I betrayed the family because I was doing something. It took all of my courage to get out of what I was sort of being groomed down this pathway. The other thing is fear is toxic to your body and brain, meaning you are not going to make rational decisions if you're in fear. And fear also is toxic to your whole body. And I have a diploma in nutrition and genetics, and we have a whole section on that, on wellness and how that affects us. But our mindset is very, very important. The other one is the reason I have this image of these two drag cars. My kids went to a high school that they had a high school drag racing team. And so my daughter, who was 16, and at that time I had an AMG Mercedes, who, if you did the quarter mile, would be doing about 110, 115 miles an hour at the end of the track. My had an assistant at that time. She had a 16-year-old son. She was a single mom, and she said, I would never, ever allow my son to be part of that drag racing team. And that was because her fear was being imposed on her 16-year-old son because she was being protective. Now I get that. I understand that. And we weren't being irresponsible as parents. But my daughter actually had the fastest drag racing time in 5 years. I could have hindered her from that experience. And we, of course, we had the safety and the helmets and all those things, but life is really about engaging. So if we use fear as a decision making, then I'm going to miss opportunities. So and 90 to 95% of everything we worry about never happens. So that's the component there that I want to encourage. Now, I also reference in my book, The Quest for Purpose, which we're going to give you, by the way, a free version of this, and we're going to give you a link for as a gift for being here today or watching the recording. But when Martin Singelman gave me permission to include his research in my book around mindset in learned optimism. So Martin did a 25-year study. In my mindset about being optimistic or pessimistic is predictive of my success. If you don't believe you can do it, then you are true. If you don't believe you are worthy, that's true. So what comes out of my mouth, what's in my head, what is where my frame of reference is that I'm actually, through my mindset, predicting and producing my success in life or lack thereof. Now, the other thing around many of the other purpose works around there is that they have purpose, but we believe also that there's purpose with character. So I could be on purpose as a drug dealer, but that's really not the character traits that we want to be able to do. So in my book, I talk about 10 and the online course, 10 character traits that we want you to consider as foundational pieces to being successful in life, no matter what your purpose is. So notice we have forgiveness, integrity, gratitude, all of these are critically important to my success in life. So, why do I have forgiveness? Well, interesting. In the book, I talk about forgiveness isn't just about forgiving other people, but that's very, very important. So I'm not saying that what the person did was okay, but if you don't forgive them, then your that bitterness, that energy is going to actually shorten your life. There's research about that. The other side is about forgiving yourself, where if there was an event that occurred, a mistake that happened, if I don't forgive myself, then I am not going to be living on purpose because I'm going to hinder my decision making around different possibilities going forward. Now, integrity is very, very important. Now, I have Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, where I had the opportunity to be in New York with him. And he is the New York Times bestseller of Triggers and What Got You Here Won't Get You There. The number one executive coach in the world, just recently retired. And this individual, now I don't know exactly how much he got paid, but I think it was around $250,000 per client to coach the top 500 CEOs of the Fortune 500 in the world. And he said, Ken, if the individual I'm coaching doesn't operate in integrity, meaning, Ken, I'll get that done by Friday, and they don't keep their promises, or I'm going to do that and they do the opposite, I can't work with them. He said, it doesn't matter what the pay is that I can't teach integrity. Integrity is a choice. And so we see that around the world. Why is it that we are so fragmented with a lot of the sort of political side? Because we know that it lacks integrity that's out there. Here's his best-selling book. I use this process for him with my coaching clients as well, because he does a thing called stakeholder feedback. And how do I take myself to the next level? And that is feedback about the situation I'm doing. Now, Martin Singelman's group, which I just was alluding to, they also did a study and said, okay, what are the top three things that contribute to well-being? In one of the top three sort of mindsets or character traits is gratitude. Or do you have a thankful heart for what you have? Or are you always thinking about what you don't have? So gratitude and thankfulness is actually one of the top three sort of conditions or mindsets or character traits that contributes to your well-being. And of course, all these other things that are listed here, worrying about other people, learning, the love of learning. Now you have to learn almost every week because there's so much change going on, humor, distractions, the power of association. We know that the research shows is that your closest five friends will predict you will be like them. They will predict your success in life and who you are and what you're doing. Now, the other one is when we think about the purpose, even though narrative is very important, we want to benchmark. If you went to your doctor and you went to was having your physical, and you were just sitting on the evaluation table, and the doctor said to you, I think your blood pressure is 120 over 80, without them putting the blood cuff on, what would you think of them? You think they're a quack. But why would we do career development, life development without assessment either? In other words, guessing should never be acceptable in helping people to get clear in their life, just having a conversation. So I'm having a conversation, how are you feeling? But I need to put the blood cuff on so that I know exactly what your blood pressure is. So this is where our assessments, and we have 14 of them, come into giving a holistic perspective. And if you want to find out more, we'll have our contact information at the end of this session. So now let's transition from those components to what I talk about is the elements of narrative in the book about if I'm going to determine my purpose in life, there's some work to be done. I went through this personally. So in 1989, I got connected to Mike McManus. Mike was an educator in Seattle, Washington, and he had found out, he was asked by the education department, there are so many kids that are leaving. Leaving school, can you do something to help them stay in school? So he created a process called SOURCE. And then he found out that most adults needed it, that they needed to figure out what they wanted to do in life. And everybody has seen the research from Gallup is that 70 to 80% of people dislike what they do from mildly irritate to loathe. So whatever we're doing in the career development field is not working. So I went through and I drove 2.5 hours each way to have, this is before coaching was big. This is 1989. For him to personally work with me to answer many of the questions I'm about to go through, the areas that I focus on, where I created an autobiography and journaled multiple pages, 60 pages handwritten back then before there was computers, to get an understanding of my life is leaving me clues. Am I paying attention? And what we do is we create a roadmap, a framework, a methodology so people can get to the answers that they seek. And without this, it's just sort of an accident. And people don't really know what those questions are. And this is why the majority of individuals are not enjoying their life, is because they have not done this work. So I went through this personally. I took 6 months of working with Mike, and I knew that I was supposed to speak. Even when I was 16 years of age, I enjoyed speaking. I was asked to be MC of many community events, even at 17, 18, 19. I enjoyed doing that. But I knew when I got into my 20s, I knew I was supposed to speak to people, but about what and to who, I was unclear. And so I went on this own journey, and that's when we came up with my purpose statement, which is to help others to live, lead, and work on purpose. My commitment in life is to help people to realize their full potential in all areas of their life. And that is what I'm called to do. So let's just go through some of these components here on 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 it. When we think about our master life purpose, I have a series of questions that, now we don't have time to go through all of these. Is that, what do you believe in? And we talked about beliefs in the beginning. Why am I here? What's your mission in life? What's your destiny? And so we have this overall arching statement of what my purpose in life is. And if I don't do this work, most people will spend more time in money going to a weekend movie and having pizza than they will on their life. And that's the unfortunate side. We believe in really journaling a lot to get clear about things. Now, if you want to do it on an iPad, now voice to text is a very powerful process to be able to do it. If you want to type it out, and I had to handwrite it because this was sort of before uh, computers. But pain is only temporary, but victory is forever. So there's effort that goes in here. So a lot of people, they just avoid this effort to be able to discover these things. Now, one of the components in the book, and this is a very powerful process, is what we call positive review, meaning your life leaves clues. So what we do is we break it down into different components, different areas in life, and say, okay, let's now pay attention to these areas in life. I'm going to give you some examples and say, where do I have what in these areas do I have a positive experience? No neutrals, no negatives. I just want to talk about senses, peoples, places, intellect. And so I'm just going to give you some examples here. When I do the workshops over on this, we will give people many, many minutes in each one of these categories to write down what comes down to them. And it's interesting, when you go through this experience, people are immediately energized when they start writing down senses that really excite them. So maybe it's the springtime and it's flowers, or it's a waterfall, as you see there, and it's just the pounding, the sound of the water pounding down from falling 100 feet. Or maybe it's just being in nature, whatever the case might be. Here's some examples for ourselves. When our kids were younger, we went to Maui. This is what they call the road to Hana, and most people call it the road to hell because it's a single road. You have people come the other way. This is the bamboo forest on the way to the volcano. And it was just amazing. Just the wind was blowing, the bamboos hitting each other. And so it was foundational. Or we're going to a local concert that we're just enjoying the music and the sound from that. My where I live, we have the third largest air show in North America. This is the CF-18 demo. And so I'm here with my son at this air show. He says, Dad, I think I want to be a pilot. So he then joins the local cadets, which actually had a building just a couple blocks away. It's funny how when you start focusing on something, I didn't even know it was there. And so here he is. He's not even 16 years of age. He's directing aircraft at one of the largest fly-in air shows in Washington State. And then he becomes a glider pilot, and he is licensed. So here he is. He's flying his family on Mother's Day. So that's my wife, my daughter, and myself. And he is flying us over the ocean before he's licensed to drive a car. So as a result of just paying attention to what energized him, he became a pilot, and he was one of 8 individuals in the country that got a bursary, and all of this was covered. He not didn't pay a cent for any of his flying. So I'm going to ask you the question: what are the smells, tastes, touches, and sounds? This is a follow up for you afterwards. And those of you that are going to download the book, it's in the book already, so you don't have to remember that. Then we say geography. Where do you like to hang out? Where do you want to go? So here we are in Hawaii and Waikiki again. We love Hawaii. And so we decided to run a 10K up to Diamond Head as part of our family. Then we have a timeshare, and I live in Vancouver, Canada, and so Whistler is where the Olympics was in 2010. So this is us having a dinner up in our timeshare. Or I was speaking at a conference in Orlando, and we decided to go and see one of the capsules at the Kennedy Space Station. So, and then our 25th anniversary, we spent in Zihuatanejo in Mexico. So, where is it that you like to hang out? What is the places? Or this is Surfer's Paradise in Australia, where I was doing a certification down in Australia, and we're hanging out there in the beach. So, what are the things that you like doing? So, when we think about experiences, we're also moving to what are the things you like doing. So, here we are doing bungee jumping. We are love motorcycling. My wife is now retired from that because of her hips, but we did that for a decade together, doing sledding in the snow, skiing, whitewater rafting, go-karts with the kids. We have a parachute center that's right behind our family farm. So this is what my daughter wanted to do for her graduation from university. So I said, okay, we'll go together with her best friend and let's do parachute jumping. And then we have a racetrack, and we decided, okay, we're going to rent race cars and do that together as part of it. And here I am with family members playing golf, zip lining. So what is it that you like to do? What are the experiences? Are you paying attention? So we are an adventure family, and that is what our holidays for 10 years with the kids, they're all married and they have kids of their own now, is that's what we did. Here, when we think about people, this is one of our certifications with people all around the world hanging out together. I'm part of a motorcycle ministry, and we're just hanging out together. We sponsored a slow pitch team. I'm the eldest on the team. My daughter's the youngest in the team, and we had a championship. So this is sort of the nature of hanging out with sports guy. And this is just a month ago. We're at an agricultural show, and this is my son with his daughter, and then my daughter's grandson, and we're hanging out together, just looking at huge equipment that are millions of dollars as part of hanging out. So, what is it that you like doing? What are those experiences? And then when we go further in this sort of this framework, invention ideas and concepts. Who do you want to belong to? In other words, if you're thinking about Mario and his group and being with fellow career developers and developers, HR developers or leaders, who is it that by belonging to them, being connected to them, this is giving you affinity, this is giving you community. What 2020 proved to us, without a doubt, is that we need community. Isolation destroys our soul. And so, what are the association memberships and groups that you need to be part of or want to be part of that have aligned values for you, and then be part of them? I'm now part of a tennis club where my wife plays tennis quite a bit, and to hang out with her because she's semi-retired, I belong to that tennis club now, so I get to see her. So we enjoy adjusted with that, and I get fitness at the same time. What's the learning you want to do, such as coming to Mario's presentation here that we have, and then even volunteer work. I'm emceeing a banquet next week. I volunteer for that as part of a way to give back to the community. So I spent weeks writing narrative in all of those different areas because our life leaves clues. Then we ask these questions. One of the 10, and now this is going to vary depending on your age in life. So, as an individual who is now a grandfather, or if you're a single person who's not married yet, or in your 20s, or even in your teens, these questions are going to change over time, but they're still very critical for us to get clear. What are the 10 most important things that have ever happened to you? What's the 10 most exciting things? What's the 10 most peaceful things? So who gets to decide what the answer is to these questions? You do. So we're not predetermining. This is really a framework. And if you're coaching somebody else, for them to come up with those answers, Then we also say, what are the seven greatest passions and loves of your life in addition to that? So we love traveling with our friends. I love motorcycling with my friends. I love doing podcasts or these webinars. So again, what are those loves and passions? And all of these are leaving clues. Now, I won't go too much into it, but here's some sort of logistical things. We then get people to take all of this aggregated journaling and do the things that are in front of the screen. And I'm just going to quickly go through this is the methodology and process that I personally went through in 1989 to get clear, that we also teach in the book and also teach in the online course as part of it. Now we do what we call keyword analysis. I look at all the journaling and say, what are the words that jump out? So this is actually a photograph of the actual journal I did way back in 1989. And I'm circling the words that really stand out, that resonate for me. Because remember, these are words that are important to me as part of that process. Then we tabulate those words and we get what we call a keyword sequence. So this is out of my book. It said, okay, what are the keywords? Okay, speaking, people, traveling. Those are the ones that came up the most frequently. And then we create what we call a keyword pattern. It's interesting what we do all of this work over weeks and months, and we distill it down to one page, one single page. And this is my keyword pattern. These 16 words really, or 12 words, pardon me, yeah, 12, represent the core elements of my life. In other words, these are themes. This is not a career, but these are themes. These are elements that they need to really be present for me to feel fulfilled, because my life history, my life leaves clues, have left these elements there for me. And I know when these are present, this is when I'm feeling most fulfilled. So speaking, traveling, fun, fitness, faith, energized, helping others, all of these are part of that process. So we get people to go through it. And then we said, okay, I've got all of this sort of summarized. Now I need to take it to the next step to say, okay, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? Am I going to go to the next level? I need to think about, okay, what does my life look in these different categories? So we don't have time to go into all of it, but this is what we call a positive review or preview of, if you were to have a perfect life going forward in each one of these categories, what would it look like to you? In other words, these are like micro vision statements. And so we have the quest wheel. We have some things in here which are a little bit different than some of the other ones, where you have public policy, what your community service, your social life. So all of these are separate areas where you can have a micro vision statement. So a vision statement is something that is an active tense, meaning you never succeed, you never get there, because you are always getting there. Meaning, example is, I want to have a healthy life or lifestyle. When does that end? That never ends. Now, I might have some goals. Okay, this is how you're going to eat, but that is a vision statement that I want to embrace for the rest of my life. So, physical health, this is what I've put down here as part of this vision statement. And then after all of this, we get people to say, what is your ideal calling, career, avocation? I think career is almost a misnomer, because it captures or tries to trap you. Is that I have a calling or an assignment. My assignment is to help make a difference in life and help people to realize their full potential. How that happens is constantly evolving, changing. The topic areas are being refined as I get into, 37 years of doing this. So the same thing for you. So what is your ideal description in life? Now, here's what happens a lot of times with entrepreneurs. You have a vision of life that is in conflict with your business. So let's say I want to have 3 months a year off, and then I buy a 24/7 corner store, and I'm one of two employees. I can't do the 24-hour, 24/7 corner store and still have 3 months off. So I have this conflict where people are not really they don't have that process in place. So we break that down. So I just want to encourage you that this is just really the beginning. This is a framework. All of this is in our online course, The Quest for Purpose. And I take you through each of the 33 modules and I give you, I'm really become your coach through that whole process. But what we're going to do for those of you that are here and watching is we're going to give you a free download of the Quest for Purpose ebook. You go to this link, kenkeis.com, now it's spelled KEIS.com/LIT, and you'll be able to get the book. And I know that Tat will help you if for some reason your spam folder blocks it. She'll be able to get that information to you for it. The other one I want to encourage that if you want to learn more about all the tools and resources. The company's now been around since 1979, so moving into 46 years, that we do have a certification for professionals so that you could transform other people's lives or even your own. We have many people going through this certification, which is now an online 1-year university with us to take themselves to the next level. So if you want to book an appointment and learn more, then just info@crgleader.com. So we're going to take a moment here now. We're getting to the top of the hour. We have a few minutes left to be able to have a conversation. I just want to stop. What did we teach that was resonating for you? Do you have some questions about what we covered? You've already got the link there. I can go back to that as far as the download, but let's just take a moment here and say, are there any questions? And you can put them in the chat. Tat will read them out to me as part of that process. And Mario's here as far as the host as well. So thank you again for attending. But we'll take questions and answers at this point, or any comments about affirmation of something that resonated for you. So that was really good for me.
Thank you, Ken. To all of our guests, now is the perfect time to submit a question. Ken, I have a quick question for you. This is my second time attending your presentation. So what really caught my attention this time versus the previous session was focusing on your meaning versus purpose. Because you always hear the quest for purpose or finding your purpose, but finding your meaning or your meaning in work in your life, to find meaning in your life is very important. So how do you go about doing that? What are the differences between that and purpose?
We believe that is a spiritual question.
Gotcha.
So when we think about spirituality and belief systems, so do you believe that there's something more going on than us just being an accident?
Right.
And if we believe that, then what is your source for that? So that goes back to Andy's book, Thinking. Do you believe that there's a God? Do you believe there isn't, or not? If there is, what does that mean to you? And because there's really a quote out of his book. I get meaning from other sources. So for me, I'm a person of faith. I get my meaning because I'm here for a reason. I don't get my meaning from serving other people. That's my purpose. I get my meaning from a divine presence that really created me to be able to make a difference in other people's lives. And so that's my faith is my anchor point. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to survive this chaos that's going on in this world these days, Mario. So that is the foundational piece. And there's an entire chapter in my story on that journey because I wasn't always there. And I
Yeah.
was a miserable individual who was, involved with not so good things in my 20s because I didn't have meaning. And that's why a lot of people are struggling these days too, is
Yeah.
they don't have meaning as a foundational piece.
Gotcha. Very good. Um, Nayeli, do you mind if I call on you real quick? I know you work with EOP students at Cal State Northridge. Do you have any questions or anything regarding how we can help students find meaning in their journey through higher education?
You can unmute.
Guys, feel free to unmute video and or audio.
Now, while
Okay,
people are, and please interrupt me if, is there anybody there that's got a question?
yeah, let me unmute. Let me see here. Hmm.
So the encouragement I have to individuals who are, watching this or participating right now is that it really does pay to do the work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people, I don't want to use the word lazy, but they just they don't make this a priority to be able to get themselves to the next level
Hmm.
in life. And so, life it's kind of becomes accident. They just are wandering around. They're not intentional. And I do want to encourage those of you that watch this or on it right now is that we're not trying to get people into a career. We're trying to get a people into their purpose. The career will come out of that purpose. It will direct them, whatever it might be. And then, our purposes in life, we have some slight adjustments. So, if I may, Tat, I mean, you're a new mom. One of your purposes is taking care of your son. That's a priority for you. If you didn't,
Yes, it is.
if you weren't a mother, then that purpose has then entered into your life as a result of starting your family. That wouldn't have
Mhm.
been true 4 years ago, would it?
No, no. And it's weird how when you don't have kids, there's a lot of things you think you would or wouldn't do until you become that parent. And it totally shifts your mind. It totally shifts your perspective.
And the joy of that and being a grandfather,
Hmm.
I had no idea that I'd love it as much as level. My little 3-year-old grandson was over here for Easter dinner with the whole family, and we're just out having a riot. And this is
Yeah,
not work. This is not effort. That is my purpose now, is to lean into my 4 grandchildren. Probably going to have 5 or 6, I guess, when it's all done. And
yeah.
that is now the new purpose in life for me, or one of them, is to be a contributor to the nurturing of these children and helping them to be successful in life. And so again,
Hmm.
but that wouldn't have been true 5 years ago.
No, and that's a good point. That doesn't matter how exhausted I
Yeah.
am. It doesn't feel like work because he's my son.
And of course, Mario, any questions there?
Yeah, Nayeli, go ahead, please. Yeah, Nayeli's having a little issue here, but it's definitely it will mute and then unmute. Jesus, it will mute and then unmute.
Well, she could put it in chat.
Yeah,
But again, and by the way, I encourage everybody to reach out and find out more about what we're doing here so that we can support you supporting others or yourself on that journey. So to kind of wrap things up, I've got two more slides. There's research done of individuals over 70, and they said, if you were to do your life over again, would you do something different? And these were the three things that they talked about. Number one is I would take more time for myself. In other words, this reflective side, this nurturing side, this mindful side. Number two is I would take more risks. Mario, don't you wish you would have bought that property 15 years ago right beside you, now that it's doubled in price? And
yeah,
then the last one is to commit to a purpose that will last beyond my lifetime. In other words, the word legacy is coming out. What is my legacy? What's my impact? What am I doing that if I am gone, that I am still having this downstream effect with everybody? So again, think about that for yourself. It's not about being self-centered for time for myself. It's re-energizing, it's focusing, it's trying not to be part of chaos. So I'm doing the best things. So again, the greatest victory is not winning against people, but winning against self as part of
And
that
Ken,
process. Yes.
we actually have so her question was, but I wanted to ask how we can encourage others to find purpose when they have to worry about paying bills and making ends meet. She works
Okay.
with foster youth and sometimes life can be a lot that finding purpose isn't their priority.
yeah.
How can I encourage them to dedicate time to do this?
It's a great question. I think what happens is you dual track it. You don't replace, in other words, don't quit a job because you're miserable because you don't have another one. You go on a journey to find out what is the perfect job for me while you're in that job. So the challenge for these individuals say, listen, if you don't change, in other words, if you don't put a round wheel on, what's going to change for you? The window for these individuals is if you don't adjust anything, what's going to be different 5 years from now? So key for them is, if we were to take some of these steps, what would it mean to you if you could get out of this condition or change this condition that you're in? And that's the window you do. You don't discredit or discount the condition they're in. What you do is you embrace that condition and say, do you want to change it? And if you want to put a round wheel on, then here is a journey that we can go on together to get there. And I don't try to be disrespectful. We have a lot of at-risk street programs that governments use our programs and our processes for individuals that are at the lowest of the low. So they're homeless, drug addicted, and they're using our tools and resources because they don't even know who they are. And they're using this for identity to be able to go forward. They need that. You need purpose to be able to make those decisions. So very good question. I think we're at the top of the hour, Mario. You have another one that's coming up. Is that correct? So
Yeah, we
there's
have.
the book.
Yep.
Any other questions before we go?
Guys, one last question, please. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have one more.
Sundar.
Sundar asked, I am somewhat confused how one goes from purpose to the job that you want. I feel in many ways the outside world does not align with being mindful. For instance, in certain professions, you like to help others, but the actual job means work life is not balanced. Other jobs one may like but need health insurance, etc.
Right. So again, this is a journey where you refine that along the way. There's not a SIC code or a job. I created my own job. I created my own company. So this journey is, okay, that is what your limitations are, but if you don't know where you're going, then those decisions will never be made. So I get it that you're going to have to go through this process that, okay, I need to have health insurance and you have those kinds of components. Then if you're in a toxic environment, it's going to destroy you. You have to move out of that. So the reality is that if you're in a role or position where it's, example is our accountant was working as a controller, working 80, 90 hours a week. She started her own accounting business because she didn't want to be 90 hours a week anymore as a CPA. So that's an example. And now she's contracting and she's controlling her own time and working when she wants, how she wants. So that's an example of being able to do it. I'm not saying that there aren't challenges, but there is always a way to work around over and be able to get the life that you're looking at. And if you don't do the work up front, then this ability to confirm that career is going to be way more difficult. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Mario for hosting. We appreciate being here. I know you have to go to the next session. And do
Dr.
reach
Ken,
out if
thank
you have
so
any
much.
questions.
Tatiana, thank you so much. To our guests, thank you for tuning in. This video will be on our YouTube channel in the next few days, and we have another presentation coming up at 11:30. Dr. Ken, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
You betcha.
Yes.